Heute haben wir Samstag. Auch dieser Tag sollte einer der Höhepunkte dieser Michael Global Fan Celebrations werden. Ein exklusives Gespräch mit dem Cast des Michael Jackson Films, persönliche Begegnungen in der Ausstellung und eine Nacht voller Energie. Aber ganz ehrlich, mein Körper hatte an diesem Tag ganz andere Pläne.
Ja.
MJ Update in Berlin. Das ist die große Fan Celebration hier in unserer Hauptstadt. Die Weltpremiere von Michael, das Biopic. Gestern Abend fand hier die große Premiere statt. Ich konnte hier schon den Film mit rund, 2500 anderen Fans sehen. Und in dem Raum war der komplette Cast. Nia Long, Jafar Jackson, die Michael Jackson-Brüder, Jackie, Marlon und Jermaine. Also es war ein Riesenspektakel hier, das in so großer Runde mit so vielen Fans zusammen zu sehen und mit der Jackson-Familie und auch noch Michaels Sohn Prince und Blanket, aka Richie war hier. Also zwei Söhne von Michael Jackson haben hier zusammen den Film miterlebt. Ja, das hier ist heute die Ausstellung. Eben war das Q&A, das Panel mit den Schauspielern hat stattgefunden.
Was man mir hier nicht ansieht, mir ging es zu dem Zeitpunkt schon richtig schlecht. Kopfschmerzen, Kreislauf, ich hab's gemerkt, irgendwas stimmt nicht und das schon seit dem Aufstehen. Aber ich wollte mir diesen Tag einfach nicht nehmen lassen. Am Backstage-Eingang der Halle war die Stimmung trotzdem komplett eskaliert. Fans haben gewartet, gehofft, einfach um einen Blick auf den Cast zu erhaschen, denn nicht alle hatten Tickets bekommen für die Conversation with the Cast, also ein Panel, ein Interview mit dem Cast. Ich habe mich dann reingeschleppt, ehrlich gesagt mehr im Funktionsmodus als wirklich fit, aber ich wusste, das will ich mir nicht nehmen lassen.
Nur deswegen. Heute ist gar kein Film, ne?
Moderiert wurde das Ganze von dem Moderator Steven Gätjen und ehemaligen Bravo-Chefredakteur Alex Gernand. Und spätestens da war klar, das hier wird ein richtig hochwertiges Panel.
Did you like the movie? Okay, welcome to a conversation with the cast and the crew. This young gentleman to my right is going to introduce himself.
My name is Alex Gernand. I'm a music journalist and I was a former long-time editor-in-chief of Bravo magazine. And I had the honor to work with Michael Jackson for 6 years around the world. And that's a great memory, of course, you know. And I'm very happy to see all you Michael Jackson fans here today.
Bevor der Cast auf die Bühne kam, ging es erstmal um die Arbeit hinter den Kulissen. Rich and Tones, Maskenbildner, Kostümdesigner, Make-up-Artist, Hair-Artists kamen zu Steven und Alex ins Panel.
I'm going to talk to some of the people who have created the image and especially the look of Michael Jackson. First of all, what we would like to know is, did you enjoy yourself last night and what did you think of all the people celebrating Michael?
Over the moon.
Oh.
Exciting. Amazing. Like, oh my God.
I agree. It's funny. I was actually going to say that. I think it's a blessing to see everyone celebrating his legacy. I think we all need it.
Billy Carla?
I agree. And I just love the Germans. It's been great, and I love the way they love Michael.
Germany is one of the biggest markets for Michael. We spent a good 3-4 months out here on tour, and it's surreal to come back to Berlin and open this movie internationally. That right there, I think, is the moment I was looking forward to.
I mean, when I first heard about this biopic being made, the first thing I thought of was like, who is going to play the King of Pop? Because to me, I mean, that was the million-dollar question to be answered. And, you know, when I heard the name Jafar Jackson, you know, obviously we did a deep dive on him, and then I was like, okay, he checks the boxes on terms of like certain things for us, in terms of number one thing, which is rhythm. And I would say that got us really, really excited to even go deeper on the film. And we were then, again, my brother and I, also doing the research. We just thought that this is time for the fans to finally get a story about the greatest of all time.
What I would like to know is, because Bill and I just had a talk about it backstage, did you get the chance yesterday to objectively enjoy the movie, Bill, or have you been paying attention to all the details that you could have done differently or better in a way, because you've been saying, you know, we worked so hard on this movie and now I can see it on the big screen and I could have done this one.
So, if anybody saw me last night, I was the one like this. Jafar would leave them, and there were times where Jafar would just be at the house at Havenhurst by himself dancing all day long. And so I would go to the house with Jafar and do makeups on him just to see how they would hold up. And during those times, we spent a lot of time together. This is a year before we started shooting the movie. Jafar working so hard to prove it to the family and to himself that he could do it. And he had every Michael affirmation postered onto a wall in a room. And so I took that and decided to do that with my work. I had all of Michael's affirmations, and one of which stared at me every day on the mirror was, doing good is not good enough. Like, every day it's gotta be better.
Bill, you have a real history with Michael Jackson, Thriller being the first paid job to recreate the look in a high school production. Is that right?
Yeah, so I was 15 when Thriller came out. And I was, my dream was to be a makeup artist in the movies, for Thriller to come out. And if you were alive at that point, Thriller didn't just come out on MTV. The making of Thriller came out on MTV. What I saw as a young budding makeup artist was, 7-time Oscar winner Rick Baker doing Michael's makeup, taking his live cast and turning him into a werewolf. And it was a life-changing moment for me. And so to be able to, so I did my friend's high school production of Thriller and turned him into Michael and all the friends into zombies, and they paid me $20 for makeup.
But it was an interesting journey with Thriller, because one of the things that I learned at the time in the design, the jeans that he wore were created. So that was interesting as being a student of my craft, because then I had to recreate that red, right? And so it had to be exact.
Crazy, but you did a wonderful job. Amazing what you created.
And in the case of the Pepsi incident, we had many members of our crew that actually were there that day. A very good friend of mine was the still photographer that day, and he took the pictures of Michael. One of my makeup artists was there that day doing brothers' makeup. So there were a lot of people who had a very sense memory of that day. So, and no one really knows that day very well. Like they know the horror of it, and we all lived through it, but what physically happened to him was so intense. And to show a glimpse of that, we got a hold of real photos of what his head looked like, what the injury was, and tried to replicate that and be true to it, because it was very important to us. It's such a turning point in his life that we be accurate to that. It changed everything for Mike. Christian and I worked very hard to come up with a mock bald burnt section of hair that we actually burnt and singed, and to recreate what happened to Michael. And then Carla's genius of how to make it work on Jafar.
Yeah, it was a difficult scene, especially for my assistant. She was there as well, and she was a young girl, and it was really hard for her. But what I gleaned from that situation and research, I found out to the day, it was half of Michael's life that happened that day. And I thought it was so interesting that as you saw in the film, he went off his course, and that situation occurred. And I think that is a lesson within itself when you are on your path and you have pressures of your family or outside forces. I think Michael is trying to tell us something in that story.
It's very emotional to us, you guys.
You can tell.
Everything we did in this movie was like that. I mean, there's not a moment that we created in this film that had a very strong emotional impact to all of us, you know?
About that, and which one was the hardest to recreate? Most difficult one?
I would say Billie Jean was the test for not only our department but for Jafar, because that was the first number that we approached for the movie, and we thought to ourselves, if he could pull this off, he could do any number. When you look at that number, there's two dance breaks. That's how we see it. There's one in the beginning, right, with the hat, but there's also the iconic dance break with the moonwalk. Jafar, he has rhythm, but this was the first ever time he attacked dance on this level, movement on this level. And we all know the King of Pop's vocabulary and syllabus of movement is not an easy thing to do. It looks very simple, but it's very complex on so many different levels.
Man hat richtig gemerkt, hier geht es nicht nur darum, einen Film zu machen, sondern Michael gerecht zu werden. Und dann kam der Moment, auf den alle gewartet haben. Der Cast des Films.
And there would be no movie, Michael, without Michael Jackson. Here's Jafar Jackson! Graham, have you had the chance to digest what happened last night at the global fan celebration of Michael? Did you like it?
Did I like it? If I liked it, did you guys like it? As my voice has gone, singing too much.
Singing too many Michael Jackson tunes afterwards. The most amazing moment, I don't know if you caught it last night, after the movie was over, everyone stayed in the hall singing along to Michael Jackson songs, enjoying themselves. There was so much love. Thank you so much. It was amazing.
Well, I think we've been saying what Michael did so well was bring people together through his music, and our hope was to bring people together through the film. And I think we all need that in the world today.
Jafar!
Congratulations. Somebody before me said, you nailed it. You nailed it. An incredible role that you played. Is it true that when you found out about the movie that you kept it secret for a year before you told your folks back home?
Yeah, I did keep it a secret from my family for up to a year, I would say. And the main reason for that is because I really wanted to see for myself how well I can do in the beginning. And I wanted to make sure that it was something I knew for sure, that I had it before I spoke too soon. So that was the main one.
And you found out you had it in you.
Yeah, I did.
What did you need to understand first in order to approach Michael, your uncle, in a way that it felt truthful? How did you approach this?
For me, it was most important to really understand, what is acting before even trying to embody Michael and what that was like. So I had an incredible coach, Angela Gibbs, that set me up with. And we did scenes from many other films, many screenplays from plays as well. So I did that for about 6 months, and then we started to do certain scenes from the script that Graham would send us. And everything was recorded so Graham could see my progression as months went on. Then I started to work with other actors, and it was a long process until we had a screen test. I think it was 2 years in, and from that screen test, it was a hair and makeup full test, and Dion was there, and I think that's the clip that Antoine saw when you were in Italy shooting Equalizer. And then I had a great lunch with Antoine and Graham, and that's when it really all started, and I felt that this project was in the right hands.
Mm-hmm. And you're portraying someone who is the most famous pop star in the world, and whose artistry was very deeply personal to you as family. How did that connection shape your process once you stepped into the role, the connection to Michael?
I felt very connected, and I realized that because when I first read the script, there were so many moments I would just cry. I got really emotional. And I felt a deep connection with that, and it brought me back to my early memories when I was a kid, around 4 or 5 years old, just studying his Dangerous tour specifically, and Smooth Criminal. That was my favorite as a kid, watching those clips just back to back, trying to mimic the moves. And so a lot of those memories came back when I was reading the script, and also just that process.
Was ich besonders spannend fand, wie persönlich dieses Projekt für ihn war. Nicht nur als Schauspieler, sondern auch als Teil der Familie.
I think I asked a million questions. I was always asking Antoine and Graham questions about Michael. I also had the opportunity to meet Michael very early on in my career, and I was with John Singleton walking down a staircase, and there's something about his essence, about his spirit, about his presence that is unforgettable, and it's also very effortless. And so I really wanted depiction of Katherine Jackson was rooted in love and safety. Because I think the biggest challenge for Michael was growing up in front of the world. We all get to do it in private. We get to make mistakes in private. We get to love in private. We get to cry in private and experience joy in private. But this was a man who was so young when he started. And the transition from boyhood to manhood can be very difficult.
After that, I also asked a lot of questions, and the more we worked on set, the more I would meet people who actually knew the men and their dynamic. Also, Jafar and I sort of, as we got to know each other and worked together more and more throughout the process, we sort of built our own sort of rapport. Also, we played pranks on each other and whatnot. And so, similar to what Antoine was saying, you sort of have to cultivate those rapports and dynamics on your own as part of the work, believe it or not. It's a fun part of the work, but it is part of the work. And fortunately for me, Jafar made that very easy. He's one of the sweetest men I've ever met. You know, he's just a great human. And as far as building the character of Bill Bray, early on when I was invited to be a part of the process, I asked if there was any footage. There's tons of pictures of Bill, but not a lot of footage of Bill. And they gave me about a 28-second clip of Bill talking backstage to the fellas before they went on stage, and so that helped me with like perceived notions as far as building the mannerisms, voice, etc. And I just watched it ad nauseum, asked a lot of questions of the people that I met along the way.
It is the role of Giuliano Baldi, and you nailed it. How did you prepare for that role? I mean, did Michael Jackson and his work mean something to you?
Yeah, I mean, he's always had a big inspiration in my life, and I prepared by watching a lot of his interviews and just trying to practice his mannerisms, the way he moves, the way he talks, and the way he moves his body. And I'm really glad that I had my mom and my aunt and just my entire family supporting me through this movie.
What was the hardest thing for you to learn?
The dancing, and specifically the James Brown splits. When I was rehearsing it with Michael Jackson's choreographers, Rich and Tone, I wasn't flexible at the time, so every morning I would stretch my hamstring. It still hurts.
I can't stress enough about these guys have never acted before.
Yeah.
I mean, hardest thing with Michael is it was hard to cut out of his performances because you don't want to miss a move that Michael would do. So in the edit room, finding those moments where we can cut out and go to the crowd, because that's what will give our audience the emotion, was really tough to do.
When I started to first get into the movement with Rich and Tone, I was very self-conscious and I felt very strange in my own body trying to embody those moves. Even as a kid, I had more freedom. I didn't take it too serious. It's more, just being in the moment as a kid, but trying to do it in a serious way, knowing I'm preparing for the role. In the early stages, it was very challenging because I wasn't used to doing any of those moves to that extent, but learning the meaning behind the moves was a whole new thing for me. But naturally, I was able to fall into something where I felt like I unlocked something within me as I got deeper into it. And it really came from repetition every day and not being satisfied. Even if I felt like I got a move, I would still work on it for hours and hours. The next day after that, until I knew it was time to shoot. But growing up surrounded by that music since my earliest memory, I think I naturally just had a inkling to not mimic or try to replicate in a way, but feel it within myself. So it's coming from my core, from my soul, not like I'm trying to copy him. And the most important thing for me was to capture that essence, but also make sure I'm feeling it. So I would look at all the footage and study it to the tiniest detail, but sometimes I'll take a break from watching any footage for 2 to 3 months and just focus on like my memory bank, but also allowing myself to surprise myself with certain moves, and that was a really fun process. And then I just remember on day one having so much anticipation, and I couldn't wait to release all that built up energy I had for the years I was preparing. And I think starting off with Bad was the best way to do it, because it broke the ice. They threw me in the deep end, the deepest part of the ocean.
It can be a good thing.
Yeah, it really surprised me that I was that calm at the same time. I didn't go into it thinking I would be so nervous, but I didn't know what to expect. It was my first time on a set.
Und genau das merkt man auch, wenn er darüber spricht, wie viel Arbeit und Druck hinter dieser Rolle steckt. Vor allem aber die emotionale Verbindung zu Michael, die zieht sich durch alles.
I identified with as a person, not even as an actor, but just as a human being. And it's in those moments that we have self-discovery. And I think for a man who was such a huge star, the fandom, the accolades, he taught us to remember to be quiet and to spend time with self, because that's the most important. That's actually when you can manifest any type of greatness you desire. And so his legacy is a reminder of that we are capable of doing whatever we want to do. You have to take the time, you have to have the patience, you have to take the quiet moments, but most importantly, the discipline. Yeah.
Neben der emotionalen Seite ging es aber auch um etwas ganz anderes, die Performance.
To feel for an audience watching in the theater.
As close as you can get to a Michael Jackson concert. That's what we really focused on. The mix, our mixers. It's again, those moments in the movie, especially with Michael, because he's so large in life. This is what I love about when I talk to Graham about what are you gonna call it? He said, just Michael. Because we all know Michael Jackson. Just like the human is in Michael. That's the human. And if those moments work, the superhero Michael, we know who that is. So we wanted to get you as close as you can to being at a Michael Jackson concert, but getting to know him in a different way.
About where I had that scene with Nia where I said I'm not like everyone else. I feel like her acting made me really emotional, and I would see her like when the cameras weren't on, she would still stay in character, and I would study that, and I would stay in character when I would see her, And that really just helped me through those scenes.
Tell us about the first moment when you saw yourself in full costume as Michael Jackson. What was that feeling like? What was that experience like? And what did you think in that moment?
Oh wait, this is yours.
But you're both Michael. Both Michael, you can both answer that question.
Want me to go first?
You go.
Okay. It was, I'll never forget that specific moment. I just remember walking from the makeup chair with Bill Corso, and I went back to my trailer, and I had a moment in the bathroom looking in the mirror for like 5 minutes before going on to set, and I had the whole bad jacket on, the pants, the loafers, and I just remember just staring at myself, just not really able to comprehend that I'm really in that moment, because there's so much time that was put into leading up until that moment, that a lot of anticipation. I just couldn't wait to get on that stage and have the mindset that I'm gonna go put on a big show, many shows, you know. But it was emotional, it was spiritual, and I just kept just thinking about him in those moments leading up to I went on that stage and performed that.
I remember I think it was a screen test, and they gave me the afro, and they gave me the vintage button up, the pants, and I just remember looking at myself and being so excited to, just do the screen test. I know it wasn't the real movie, but I knew just, this is really happening, and we're just filming a Michael Jackson movie, and I couldn't wait to bring his energy into the room.
How did you feel when we gave you the rap to Pep?
Well, he peed on me, and he peed on me, so it was really fun, but also very nasty.
He's just the coolest guy, Julian. It's amazing.
Also, shout out to Marcy.
Am Ende ging es aber um eine ganz einfache Frage. Was soll das Publikum aus diesem Film mitnehmen?
What do you want them to take away from what you have achieved with this song?
My biggest dream for them to take away is to feel Michael's essence and his presence when they see this, and also to have a deeper understanding of who he was as a person, his soul at the core, and to leave singing, leave dancing, and inspire, and to bring your audiences to have an understanding of who he was, and to bring just people together from all over the world. That was his driving force. That was his message from the very beginning. And last night I'm still not over from that. It was hard to go to bed, but it was one of the most special nights, just to see with the crowd, feel that energy, hearing people sing along, feeling the ground move from people dancing, stomping their feet. I was paying attention. I couldn't be happier.
Same with Jafar's answer. I want them to leave theater. I want them to leave the theater while I want them. And I want them to know what Michael Jackson was like behind the scenes. And now when they see this movie, they can get a deep understanding of who he actually was.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much to all of you granting us this gift of a great movie, Michael. And we are very excited, the audience, because we have an early Christmas present for you as well. Because our producer, our director, and our cast have agreed to sign autographs. Give me 1 second, because I know that you're very excited, and before it turns...
Nach der Conversation gab es dann noch die Möglichkeit, den Cast persönlich zu treffen.
We have a table over there with...
Michael, der Film, so heißt er, ab dem 22. April überall im Kino. Ich habe ihn hier gesehen in der Uber Eats Music Hall und ja, der Film, was soll ich sagen, 2 Stunden, 10 Minuten ungefähr ging er. Es war eine Achterbahnfahrt der Gefühle. Der Film startet so krass, also eine Party am Anfang, dann kommt eine Szene, wo mir direkt die Tränen runterflossen. So emotional, die Szene, wie Joseph mit seinen Kindern umgeht. Es ist, ja, erschütternd, das kann man nicht anders sagen. Und in diesem Tempo geht der Film weiter. Am Anfang dachte ich, der Film geht sehr intensiv auf die Jackson 5 und die Jacksons Zeit ein. Das war tatsächlich nicht der Fall. Der Anfang, die Jackson 5 Jahre, die werden relativ zügig abgehandelt. Und danach geht es weiter in die Jahre nach den Jacksons. Off the Wall, Thriller. Das ist der Kern des Films. Victory Tour. Und eine Freundin von mir hat das so beschrieben, das ist wie eine Collage aus Michael Jacksons Leben, die dieser Film abhandelt. Und so geht es auch. Schlag auf Schlag werden Michaels emotionale Momente gezeigt. Höhepunkte. Es wird nicht alles in der Tiefe erklärt, aber ich sage mal, für jemanden, der nicht so in der Thematik drin ist, der mehr über Michaels Leben erfahren möchte, ist das auf jeden Fall eine sehr gute Zusammenfassung seines Lebens. Der Film an sich spricht alles an, was bis Mitte der 80er bekannt war. Die Gewalttätigkeit des Vaters. Es werden Michaels Andeutungen, Medikamenteneinnahme wird genommen. Der Pepsi-Unfall wird so emotional und detailliert gezeigt, wie ich nicht gedacht hätte, wie man das zeigen kann. Der Funke ist zu sehen, wie er auf Michaels Haare springt. Und die Folgen werden sehr intensiv und klar erzählt in diesem Film. Auch das Gänsehautmomente. Auch der Moment, wo Michael das erste Mal Bubbles seinen Eltern und seinen Geschwistern zeigt, wird gezeigt. Auch der Umgang, wie Michael mit Bubbles umgegangen ist. Sehr intensiv und es gibt natürlich auch Kritikpunkte. Michaels Schönheitsoperation wird hier gezeigt. Er fährt mit den Fingern über das Gesicht von Peter Pan und über die Nase, was ein bisschen überzeichnet ist, meiner Meinung nach. Weiß nicht, wie es euch geht. Schreibt es mal in die Kommentare, wenn ihr den Film gesehen habt, wie euch das gefallen hat. Oder auch generell alles rund um den Film gefallen hat. Der Film lässt mich sehr emotional zurück. Er kriegt von mir volle Punktzahl. Er ist eine 10 von 10. Ich kann es nicht anders sagen. Er gehört. Ich bin überhaupt nicht enttäuscht, auch wenn man natürlich als Fan, wenn ich jetzt mit anderen Fans darüber spreche, da fällt uns jedem was ein. Ja, das hätte man noch, das hätte man und das hätte man noch ein bisschen anders. Wo ist Diana Ross? Wo ist Janet? Ja, es gibt ganz viele Punkte, wo wir sagen, da hätte man noch was anderes erzählen können oder das noch ausführlicher erzählen können. Aber es ist nun mal ein Spielfilm. In 2 Stunden 10 muss das reingepackt werden. Wir haben den Film mit den Jacksons, An American Dream. Der geht schon sehr intensiv auf die Zeit, sehr ausführlich auf die Jacksons ein. Und da ist das eine gute Zusammenstellung, wenn man diesen Film im Anschluss schaut. Gänsehautmomente, sehr emotional. Mich hat der Film auf jeden Fall abgeholt. Und das war für mich einer der besonderen Momente des Tages. Autogrammstunde. So nice to meet you. Hi, so nice to meet you. You did a great job. It was so fantastic. Oh, so nice, Neil. Thank you very much. Yeah. Hey, nice to meet you. Can't believe it. Thank you for that movie.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Okay.
Ja, du menar det? Ja. Nej, nej. Bara för att ge dig lite vingar.
Aber genau da hat mein Körper dann komplett dicht gemacht. Ich bin zurück ins Hotel, habe mich hingelegt und mich erstmal mehrere Stunden komplett rausgenommen. Und ich wusste zu dem Zeitpunkt ehrlich gesagt nicht, ob ich den Abend überhaupt zur Party schaffe. Aber irgendwie habe ich mich dann doch wieder aufgerafft. Weil ich mir dachte, wenn ich schon hier bin, dann ziehe ich das jetzt auch durch. Und als ich dann drin war, ja, da war es plötzlich auch irgendwie egal. Die Musik, die Energie, das war einfach ein Moment, den man nicht planen kann. Mir ging es zwar immer noch nicht so richtig gut, aber ich wollte dieses Gemeinschaftsgefühl nicht missen.
Für ein Wochenende. Wir sind hier immer noch in der Uber Eats Music Arena. Hier findet heute die Michael Jackson Premierenparty statt. Um 19:30 Uhr war Einlass. Es geht bis Mitternacht. Wir haben jetzt ungefähr 8:30. Eine Stunde ist es offen. Unter uns ist der große Saal leergeräumt, da wo noch die ganzen Stühle drin standen für die große Filmpremiere. Und ja, da ist jetzt eine riesen Disco-Kugel drin, eine Dolby-Soundanlage und in der Halle findet richtig was statt. Ja, laute Michael Jackson Musik und die Ausstellung ist hier auf allen 3 Ebenen ebenfalls noch geöffnet, so dass man sich hier auch immer noch alles anschauen kann, was hier an Ausstellungsexponaten aus dem Michael-Film ausgestellt wird. Ja, hier hat man auch einen schönen Überblick über den roten Teppich von hier oben. Habe ich noch gar nicht so gemerkt. Und ja, wir sind hier am Michael-Wochenende in Berlin. 3 Tage lang feiern wir den King of Pop. Morgen endet das Ganze aber schon. Am Sonntag ist nur noch diese Ausstellung mit einigen Terminslots geöffnet. Und ich glaube draußen am roten Teppich, da kann man auch noch vorbeigehen. Und gegen 15 Uhr wird hier wohl langsam abgebaut. Das ist jedenfalls die Zeit, die ich so mitbekommen habe. Ja, und dieser zweite Tag, der schlaucht auch schon ganz schön. Ich merke das heute. Mit Kopfschmerzen aufgewacht und so kämpfe ich mich durch den Tag. Es ist auch irgendwie unglücklich, ne? Wenn schon mal so ein Wochenende ist und dann geht es einem nicht gut. Aber kann man nichts machen. Augen zu und durch. Premiere ist nur einmal. Und ich werde jetzt mal schauen, dass ich hier noch ein bisschen in den Rhythmus komme, um mir hier ein bisschen auch noch die Party zu gönnen. Und ja, auf einen entspannten Abend.
Gegen 23 Uhr ging es nicht mehr, weil mein Körper einfach nicht mehr mitgemacht hat. Ich war fix und fertig. Aber trotzdem war das einer dieser Tage, die man niemals vergisst. Im nächsten Teil zeige ich euch dann noch die Ausstellung und alles, was ich bisher ausgelassen habe. Ich muss mal überlegen, gibt es da überhaupt noch was?